So, Alanna Maguire is the Research Manager for the National Cultural Flows Research Project, as Will just mentioned. Alanna has a background in hydrogeology and environmental science and has worked in government and the non-profit sector supporting community involvement in natural resource management. With experience in policy development and community-led planning, Alanna has helped Aboriginal nations in Victoria to develop whole-of-country plans and has also worked on security programs in West Africa. Based at the National Native Title Council in Melbourne, Alanna is the Research Manager for the project, which is a transformative research program looking to embed Aboriginal water allocations in Australia's water planning and management frameworks. Alanna.
Thanks for inviting me to come and talk with you today. And I'd just like to thank Auntie Georgina and Auntie Alice for welcoming us today. It's a real pleasure to meet you. And acknowledge the Wurundjeri as the first peoples of this country and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. So I'll talk a bit about the National Cultural Flows Research Project, which has been going on for a few years now, about 5 or 6 years since it was first formulated, with the intention of developing a rigorous and evidence-based approach to defining what are cultural flows, what are Aboriginal water rights and how can they be implemented in the real world. I'll just acknowledge a few people in the room who have put a lot of work into the project already over the years. The elusive Damien, who's the independent chairperson of our committee, who keeps the committee members in line. Fred Hooper, who is not only through his role as the chairperson of Northern Basin Aboriginal Nations, but also one of the trial sites for the project is on Fred's country, and so he's been marshalling the enthusiasm of his mob to get involved in the project and participate in the research. And Marnie Ireland, I think I saw sneak in before, who was the research manager of the project for a number of years as well. So we'll kindly introduce the Echuca Declaration. So this is the definition that has been adopted by Mildred and Enver about what cultural flows are. And there are a few key elements of this definition. Water entitlements that are legally and beneficially owned. So it's not just a concept of water that's being used for cultural purposes, but it's actually the nations involved in this project and the nations seeking cultural flows are seeking a legal right entitlement to water to be able to do what they want with, to improve spiritual, cultural, environmental and social outcomes, as well as for economic use, which is largely being left out of kind of water rights discussions with Aboriginal people today. So that's the Echuca Declaration. The aim of the overall research project, Cultural Flows Research Project, is to build up the evidence to embed cultural flows in the standard water planning system. So it's not a side project or a side right, but it's a part of the water management framework that is underpinning water management in Australia. So the research is underpinned by a number of principles. I won't go through them all, but these are important. These were put together by traditional owners over the design phases of the project. And it's a rights-based approach, recognising that the research needs to be done in an inclusive and participatory way that respects the underpinning rights, intellectual property rights, decision-making rights of Aboriginal people, respecting the rights to free, prior and informed consent, but also recognising that it needs to be a practical project. So the outcomes need to have a direct connection in with government policy and legislation. So it's sort of trying to connect what's traditionally been considered Aboriginal science and Western science, trying to bring those together into an integrated framework. So in terms of the structure of the project, the first component that was completed, I think, in 2013 was a literature review, and the idea there was to scan all of the Australian and some overseas literature to understand what methodologies are already available for defining cultural flows, what kind of approaches and projects have been trialled so far, just to get that baseline, so we're not starting from scratch and not using a whole of the work that's been done in the past. It also involved a bit of a scan of cultural values that had already been defined in various ways in various research papers or kind of legal frameworks. So that underpinned the next phase, which was the field trial phase. So components 2, 3 and 4 were all kind of bundled together. And the idea of this phase was to use field-based, real sort of on-ground field-based participatory research with traditional owners to understand how we can define the values and aspirations of Aboriginal people in relation to water. So that's the output of that first part is, you know, a methodology that is developed and owned by Aboriginal people that can encapsulate what it is that matters and what are all the cultural but also social, economic and spiritual values about water. The idea then was to take that and develop a methodology to understand how do we define or how do we quantify how much water is needed to meet those values? Because one of the arguments that was always presented back to traditional owners by government is tell us how much water you want. And without sort of some way to link that idea of the aspirations with, you know, modelling frameworks, there was no way to put a gigaliter kind of figure on that. So the idea here is to provide a methodology that can be used to connect the cultural values with a tangible amount of water that can inform those discussions about water allocation. The fourth component then is about looking at, well, in that context, you know, how does that fit with the existing water allocation framework? What are the differences between what's being asked for cultural values and environmental water? So that diagram that we'll put up, you know, how much of this sits in that cultural flows box and how much sits in the Aboriginal environmental outcomes box. So it's doing that sort of analysis to understand, you know, what is the system that we're working with. So that part of the project is currently underway. The field work is mostly complete, but the results are kind of being analysed and written up now. So I haven't unfortunately got any results to present to you tonight, but that will sort of come hopefully in the next year. So the final kind of research component is this sort of governance, legal, institutional policy analysis. So it's looking at that evidence and what we understand from that field research to say, well, what are the opportunities and what are the barriers in the current system to implementation of cultural flows. So we're just in the process of commissioning that piece of work, but the idea is that, you know, is to connect that field research into a pretty comprehensive analysis of what can happen, and the conversations with the researchers will happen both with traditional owners as well as with the government agencies to be able to understand from the different perspectives, you know, what are the limitations of the current system and what are the opportunities that could be exploited. Those bottom three components are kind of support aspects to the project. So there's an element of capacity building, so both for Mildred and NBAN to build on some of the work that both organisations are already doing. You know, what are their needs around providing skills and capabilities for their members to be able to participate in the water planning and management system. Communication, so a key principle of the project was always about understanding, you know, making sure that all the members, particularly the member nations of NBAN and Mildred, were kept informed about the project. This is their project. You know, my role in NNTC is to help deliver it on behalf of Mildred and NBAN and their representatives on the committee representing their member nations. So keeping that information going out both ways is really critical for the project, and then the boring project management stuff. So I talked a bit about the governance of the project. So the way that it was set up was intentionally to be an Aboriginal-owned, Aboriginal-led project. So the decision-making is all held by Aboriginal groups. So Damien, that's Damien, if you wanted to know what he looked like. So Damien's the independent chair. You know, his job is to keep all the committee members in line. Paul Lane from Nailsma, he's based up in Western Australia. Maureen and Michael from NBAN, and Grant and Renee from Mildred. So Nailsma, NBAN and Mildred are the decision makers on the committee. It's a participatory committee, and everyone puts their views forward, but they have the responsibility and the right to decide how the project's going to go forward. And that's a really important underpinning principle of this project, was that, you know, it was being run and led by traditional owners rather than imposed on them. During the early phases of the project, those three groups were the whole committee, and at points during the project, it was sort of decided that
there wasn't value in disconnecting too much from the policy and government people who would be needing to implement the change. So the decision was made to bring in key government agencies onto the project committee. So while they're not technically decision makers, it's an open forum and all those perspectives get shared around the table so that government agencies can start to sort of prepare and think about how some of these things might work and participate in that analysis and that discussion. So the Murray-Darling Basin Authority and the CHU are they're the key project funders, so they've put up the bulk of the funding. National Native Title Council, which is my organisation, but in its sort of role as a native title and land and resource rights advocacy agent, is on there. And then government representatives from South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, ACT and Queensland are all in the room and around the table 4 times a year to discuss all of these issues and to discuss how the direction of the project and how it can be guided to make sure that the outcomes are going to be useful for kind of real world implementation. So the key things that we're hoping to achieve out of this project. So as I mentioned, one of the key things is putting some rigour around this argument for cultural flows. It's not a new concept. It's something, water rights are something that have been talked about and lobbied for decades. But as I mentioned, the feedback has often been, give us the numbers, give us the figures, give us the data. So the idea, the conceptualisation of this project was about putting that rigour behind the argument so that traditional owners can sit at the table with an equal voice to all of the other people around the table. The methodologies are a really important part of this project, part of the output. So even though the benefits to those methodologies will be beyond the life of the project itself and won't necessarily feed into the final reports. But what's been really important is making sure that methodologies both for, as I mentioned in component 2, defining what values of water, Aboriginal values of water are, those methodologies for how to come to that collective view about why water is important, as well as the next component about modelling and quantifying what water is needed to meet those values. Those methodologies are being designed to be replicable across other sites in other places. And so part of that toolkit that Will was talking about, those sorts of tools are things that are available among the other suite of tools for nations to use as needed. Part of the project also is about building a monitoring and indicator framework, a monitoring and indicator framework that sort of makes sense in the cultural flow space. So again, something that can be replicated elsewhere to keep that information and knowledge going. And one of the things that we've found in the case study sites is that monitoring, doing that monitoring and taking the time to look at what's happening in the country has been really valued by the participants at the sites for the Aboriginal Nation. And after each field trip, there's been a real enthusiasm to go out next time and look again and see what's changed. And part of that sort of discipline of, as you would all know, of regularly looking at what's going on and the impacts of your interventions is a really valuable thing. And having kind of a framework as a part of this toolkit has been really useful. And then, as I mentioned, the other output really is a set of tools and arguments for Mildred, NBAN and NALSMA to use in discussions with various government agencies and water planners to try and look at what opportunities there are to change the system. So the case study sites I mentioned, so it's a bit of chopping and changing about different case study sites over time, but the committee landed on 2 sites, one in the Northern Basin, one in the Southern Basin. As I mentioned, Rural Swamp is in Maguire country, that's Friends country, and to give you IPA wetlands in Nari country, down just near Hay. And the reason these 2 were chosen is they're quite distinct, different sites. So they're looking at different issues and different problems and different challenges with the implementation of cultural flows. So to give you IPA wetlands is on the Murrumbidgee. It's a heavily regulated system. They have a lot of infrastructure, watering infrastructure that they can use. They have experience in watering programs. So the idea of that one is to look at what the opportunities are for them. If they had a cultural allocation, what could they do with it? In the north, as you would know, it's quite a different system. It's far less regulated, there's far less water available in the system. So for a lot of nations, the only option will be to buy water rights and then hope it rains. So part of the intention of looking up there is to look at what are the challenges, what are the options, when there's no water around, what are the options for meeting cultural needs of water. So they've been two very interesting and quite different sites. So just a quick overview, and I won't give you too long, I still haven't, Damien still hasn't got out of traffic. So Guruma Swamp in the north, so the general methodology was, the first field trip was about getting the nation members together. So the intention of this project was that it's participatory research. So the researchers working in partnership with the Aboriginal nation members. So to sit down, introduce the project, make sure everyone is on the same page, and then to design how collectively everyone wants it to be done in a way that's going to deliver the right outcomes. And then the focus was on the kind of social research side of things, identifying aspirations for cultural flows. So using a range of different methods, and it was different for the two sites, the approaches that they preferred to use, to be able to understand, what are their aspirations and values. And then the third field trip at this site was about doing the modelling and doing that monitoring and understanding what is the baseline. The tricky thing with this site, the original intention of the design of the project was to actually simulate cultural flows at the field sites. So do a baseline monitoring field trip, run a cultural flow, the CHU offered to provide water to simulate a cultural flow, and then to do monitoring after and see, based on the kind of key indicators around the species or the values that were identified as the highest priority, how are those flows being done at a particular time for those values? What are the outcomes? Unfortunately, as I mentioned, there isn't any water up in the north, so there was no water to put down the river. So this site was focused more on the modelling and talking with the community about what they would want, and simulating how it would work if there was water around. So the next part of the analysis is to look at, what are the risks to cultural values, if there is no water for 10 more years, or if there is water, what will it take to meet some of those needs. So then the final trip is, it's analysing the findings, but it's also making sure that they're presented back to the participants, in the community, and that's a really important thing to make sure that that sort of cycle is completed and that the work is presented back. So at Toowoomba, because this is a more regulated system, a cultural flow was planned, a trial flow was planned for this. So it was a similar kind of setup with the kind of participatory design at the beginning, a social research kind of approach to identify aspirations, values and uses of water, and then do that baseline monitoring and the post-flow monitoring and analyse the findings. Unfortunately, it rained a lot. So Toowoomba, I don't know if you could sort of see, he's underwater. That wasn't from the flow, that was from the rain. So it did mean that we didn't manage to do the baseline monitoring before the rain came. The actual ranger stayed. The ranger at the site had to move out of his house for 2 months because he couldn't actually get onto the site. He occasionally went and visited by boat. So that sort of messed with our methodology. I think there's still a lot of really valuable findings, and we're sort of trying to correlate as much as we can. If all that rain was a planned cultural flow, what would that have shown? So we'll see how all that analysis is currently being done, and the report's due soon, which the committee will consider in the next month. But that's interesting, quite a different site and quite a different approach. The focus of that group was a lot on, using the infrastructure and getting the infrastructure that gives them the ability to control on the site where they want to put the water. So they can have a very planned approach to, certain values here. They want to create a rookery in one area, promote the growth of lignum in one area, that sort of thing. At Guruma Swamp, the focus was a bit different. It was more, the community were more interested in returning the river to how it used to be before, Abbey Station was built upstream. So, the focus isn't on that. We're not really interested in having pipes across the landscape. It's more, how can we just get the flows back in the river and so that they flow into the swamp. So it's quite a different conversation and a different argument, and creates, the need for a whole lot of different solutions. So the two sites are quite interesting. I think that's all I wanted to talk about.